So I think that our 21st century application of Rumi is simply this: the demand that we be bigger than we have ever been in our lives, to the point of infinity. That it's not just infinity into outward space, but it's infinity within as well. Infinite enough to love everyone and to bring them in more closely. So, okay, I'll take your comments or questions if you have them. Yes?
You've talked about the contemporary applications of Rumi's practice and how many people are really applying the points. And at the end, you also gave examples of the interaction between Rumi and Kant, where they were talking about things that people like myself may have a hard time understanding.
Mm-hmm.
So in this century, do you see a danger as, for example, some people not being able to understand Rumi's poems, like what he wanted to say exactly? And another thing is, you've also talked about conserving the religion, that his intention was that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think people, when they read that, they're reading that to conserve their religion, or they're finding a more watered-down version of the religion in there?
I think it's possible that people are doing both. I mean, some people are finding, they come to Rumi and they find a very powerful explication of Islam. And it brings them back to the faith in a way that's very enlivening. Others who are coming at it not from a Muslim tradition, but from some other tradition, Christianity, Jew, whatever, they come to it and maybe they don't see the Islamic edge to it as much as they would if they themselves were Muslim and had that background. So they have a slightly different frame on it, and they get something different from it. So it doesn't accomplish for them what it does for perhaps the Muslim. Now, is that a misunderstanding of Rumi? Not necessarily, because all good poetry has multiple levels of meaning. Poetry, by definition, as a genre, is pregnant with complex meaning. There is no one interpretation of any poem he wrote. There is no only one way to look at it. As poetry, it can be approached from many different directions because it's evocative. It's using symbols and metaphor and things to speak about things. If he wanted to be much more precise and write very, very clearly about truths, he wouldn't have written poems. He would have written treatises, philosophical treatises, which he has a whole lifetime of writing those. Here he's expressing something very different. So I think there's always a danger of misinterpreting the poems or not understanding them in their fullness. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think that's just part of what poetry is as a genre, and he's a poet. Anything else? Bura, you have a look on your face.
I believe it was 5 years ago, I don't remember whether it was at Rice or your page, there was a panel speakers, one of them was you, and it was about neighborhood. And what you said about the AAR meetings, it sounds like to me like as the generations pass, those people in the mystical traditions do not change their minds. Because at that time you said, the same example at that year, and you said they can agree with each other because they think they are equally wrong.
They think they're what?
Because they think they can be equally wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that Rumi discourages says people do not have prejudice. We understand this from his poetry. But I don't know whether there is a solution that he offers. If there is any solution that he offers, could you share it with us to get rid of prejudice?
The only thing that I see in his work that has us attacking the prejudice that we have is the practice of humility. Particularly with regard to knowledge of God. So that We never say, I know God. No, we don't. How can finite mind know the infinite? We can experience, we can feel God's presence. We can experience it. But do we 100% understand it? Do we 100%, even if the Quran is the perfect book, even if it's a miracle, even if it's perfectly the revelation of God, is our understanding of it perfect? Is our application of it in our lives perfect? No, we can never say this. So it's that type of humility that keeps us aware of our own limitations so that others' limitations aren't so glaring. And that's the only thing that works. And of course, he's not the only one who teaches that. You know, I mean, Jesus teaches it. The Prophet Muhammad, he taught it. The Buddha taught it. So many of the great teachers teach it. That's the only thing I've seen. I have not read every word of Rumi. So maybe there are other things that he says that are better than that. But that's the one thing that I've seen. Anything else? Thank you all. Oh, wait, one more.
You said poetry has different understanding points and levels. So if you had a message like Rumi had, would you convey your message using poetry or write another book or do something so that you can get rid of these different misunderstandings or different aspects?
It would depend on what my goal was in writing. Some people choose to write, now I'm not a poet myself, but some people who choose to write poetry find that poetry is the only kind of language that can express their experience. It's the only type of, I mean, think about it. When we have any kind of extraordinary experience, whether it's, you know, we see something, we see a beautiful sunset, or we run into someone at the store, or, you know, some extraordinary experience. We see a friend we haven't seen in 20 years, some extraordinary experience. What's the first thing we want to do? Tell it. You run home and you go, you won't believe what happened to me today. And you share it. And so there's that impulse to share. What if what you've experienced you don't have the language for? Or the language that you're most used to using, you know, just regular philosophical language, writing regular books and essays and articles. What if that doesn't capture it? Sometimes poetry is the only language that can capture it. So it's not so much that you are trying to express it to others, but the risk is that it won't be clear. What really is happening there is you're trying to get it out from your heart onto a piece of paper and to just express it in some way and hope that others can capture it and see it. So I think that's a dimension that exists in poetry that maybe doesn't exist in more straight essay writing or book writing. And that's unique to the genre. So, I mean, the downside is that it's not always clear what he means or any other poet means. The good side to that is there's multiple meanings, and it's just pregnant with meaning. So, okay? Thank you.